for the original Saturday Night Live, which was a variety show with Howard Cosell.
Jane Curtin just blew the lid off Kate and Allie after 40 years of silence. At 77, the TV legend admits she hated the original title, felt nothing after winning 2 Emmys, and kept a shocking secret from fans. While America fell in love with her character, Jane was living a double life, commuting to Connecticut and hiding from fame. The truth about what really happened behind the scenes of TV's favorite sitcom is finally coming out, and it's not what you expected. Jane Curtin was born in Cambridge, Massachusetts in 1947. Her father ran an insurance agency, and her mother took care of the family. They were Irish-American, with roots going back to County Clare in Ireland. Jane grew up surrounded by both strong Catholic traditions and the brainy buzz of nearby Harvard and MIT. That mix of strict values and sharp thinking stayed with her. It later helped shape her unique kind of humor, smart, quiet, and just a little rebellious. Her early life was pretty structured. She went to Newton Country Day School, a Catholic all-girls school known for being serious and demanding. The school focused on faith, discipline, and proper manners. Jane learned to stay calm and keep a straight face, even when things got silly. That would become her secret weapon in comedy. While others cracked jokes with big energy, Jane's power came from staying still and letting the audience come to her. After graduating in 1965, she moved to New York City for college. She started at Elizabeth Seton Junior College, another Catholic school, but one that placed her right in the middle of a wild and changing city. New York was full of music, protests, and new ideas. Jane soaked it all in. After 2 years, she went back to Boston to study at Northeastern University, but something didn't feel right. In 1968, she made a huge decision. She dropped out of school to try comedy. That choice shocked everyone who knew her. Jane had always followed the rules. Now she was jumping into something risky and unpredictable. She wasn't completely starting from scratch, though. Comedy was already in her family. Her cousin, Valerie Curtin, was an actress and writer, and her uncle, Joseph Curtin, was a radio personality. Jane had also grown up with 3 siblings, which helped her learn how to read a room and play different roles. Sometimes the peacemaker, sometimes the quiet observer. Those family dynamics taught her a lot about timing and tone, which are key in comedy. Losing her older brother and sister later in life gave her even more depth as a performer, even when she was playing things for laughs. Jane Curtin didn't start out aiming to be a TV star. In 1968, at just 21, she left college behind and jumped into something completely different. She joined a small comedy group in Cambridge, Massachusetts called The Proposition. It wasn't glamorous. They performed in a tiny theater 6 nights a week, sometimes 3 shows a night. The sketches were sharp, political, and risky. The work was tough, but Jane stuck with it for 4 years, learning how to stay calm under pressure and deliver punchlines with that cool, dry style she'd later become known for. Night after night, she got sharper, faster, better. By the time she left in 1972, she had done over 1,000 shows. She wasn't famous yet, but in Boston, people knew who she was. Not long after that, she helped write and star in an off-Broadway show called Pretzels. It opened in late 1974 and ran for more than 100 performances. She teamed up with some old friends from The Proposition, and they built the show from scratch. The sketches were about life in the city, funny, a little sad, and totally real. One of them showed Jane as a housewife dreaming about being a performer. Another had her switching between characters with ease. Critics noticed she wasn't just performing. She was writing, creating, and showing just how many gears she had, but theater didn't always pay the bills. Between stage gigs, Jane dove into commercials. From 1972 to 1975, she was everywhere selling soap, cereal, and even pretending to be twins in a deodorant ad. It might not sound like much, but these quick jobs taught her how to work with cameras, hit marks, and keep a straight face through the weirdest scripts. She joked later that she could sell anything with a serious look, and it was true. These ads weren't glamorous, but they sharpened her skills in a different way and gave her a comfort on camera that would be priceless later. Then came 1975. Saturday Night Live was just an idea floating around in New York. A few people told Jane there was something happening, a new kind of show starting, and that she might be a good fit. She showed up to the first audition with some friends, expecting little. When they called her back, she thought it was just a meeting. She brought nothing prepared, but in a moment of panic, she remembered a sketch she'd written for a screen. test and happened to have in her bag. She pulled it out and performed it with another auditioner, Gilda Radner. It worked. The producers saw something. Quick thinking, sharp delivery, real timing. That moment landed her a spot on a show no one had seen yet, but would soon become a legend. When SNL launched, no one knew what it would become. Jane joined the original cast in 1975 for just $750 a week. She had never done live television before, but she had the instincts for it. While others on the show were loud, wild, and constantly trying to one-up each other, Jane played it differently. She stayed quiet. She didn't fight for airtime or push her ideas too hard. She figured, they hired me for a reason, so they'll use me. It wasn't laziness. It was strategy. She kept her personal life separate from the chaos, living quietly with her husband, her dog, and a garden. She didn't party. She didn't chase attention. She just did the work. In 1976, something big changed. Chevy Chase left the show, and Jane took over the weekend update desk. Suddenly, she was delivering fake news to millions every Saturday night. She did it with the same calm, cool presence she'd honed for years. Whether alone or alongside Dan Aykroyd or Bill Murray, she was always the steady one. Their point-counterpoint segments became legendary. Aykroyd would insult her with absurd lines like, "Jane, you ignorant slut," and she'd fire back with a perfectly dry comeback. It was wild, sharp, and unforgettable, and Jane made it work by never breaking her deadpan rhythm. As the show grew in fame, Jane carved out her role. She became the straight woman, the grounded presence in a cast full of chaos. She didn't need to wear crazy wigs or scream for laughs. She knew how to hold the camera, how to react, how to make other people shine. It was a role few wanted, but Jane made it essential. She credited her commercial work for making her comfortable with that kind of acting. And once she had Weekend Update, she didn't have to fight anymore. That gig kept her steady, and it kept her happy. But even as she found success, Jane struggled with one part of the job, the audience. In a later interview, she admitted she didn't think much of the people watching early SNL. "I thought anyone watching must be really stupid," she said. It wasn't arrogance, it was anxiety. The show felt strange and untested, and Jane dealt with the stress by tuning out the crowd. She created a bubble and focused on the work. That changed over time. Out in public, she saw how people reacted to her, shaking, excited, overwhelmed. That's when she realized the show wasn't just a job. It meant something. People felt the energy, even if she didn't always see it. In the late 1970s, Jane Curtin became one of the most recognizable faces on Saturday Night Live. But even as she made people laugh every week, her time on the show wasn't easy. One moment, though, stuck with her more than any other. It was 1978. During a sketch called Point Counterpoint on Weekend Update, Dan Aykroyd looked straight at her and said, "Jane, you ignorant slut." The line was meant to be shocking and funny, a parody of loud, dramatic TV debates. Audiences loved it. It became a catchphrase almost overnight. Years later, Jane said strangers still came up to her and repeated it. Once in Seattle, she heard kids outside her trailer saying, "Jane, you ignorant slut," a cleaner version, but still clearly from the sketch. The line was so famous, it ended up on TV Land's list of the top 100 TV catchphrases. Jane had mixed feelings about it. She knew it was funny, but she also knew it wouldn't fly today. While that sketch made her a household name, things behind the scenes weren't so funny. Jane had a rocky relationship with John Belushi, one of the show's biggest stars. She didn't sugarcoat it. She called him an addict. His drug use made him hard to be around, and by the third season, it was getting worse. She once caught him going through her purse, likely looking for drugs or money. Worried and angry, she told the show's creator, Lorne Michaels, "You've got to do something. This guy is going to die." But her warning didn't lead to much. On top of that, Belushi made it clear he didn't think women were funny, and he told her so to her face. Still, Jane stayed focused. She didn't let it shake her. She kept showing up, kept performing, and proved over and over that she was one of the strongest cast members on the show. Part of what made Jane stand out was how different she was from the rest of the cast. While many of them partied hard after the show, Jane always went home. She didn't drink or do drugs. At a time when cocaine use was everywhere in the entertainment world, she stayed completely clean. After each episode, she'd leave the studio and go home to her husband instead of joining the after parties. This made some of her castmates see her as a bit of a buzzkill, the square peg of the group. But Jane didn't care. She stuck to what she believed in. Years later, it became clear her choices had paid off. While others burned out or got lost in addiction, she kept going strong despite all the drama off camera. Jane helped create some of SNL's most beloved characters. One of them was Primal Conehead, the straight-faced alien wife in a family of space oddballs. The idea came from Dan Aykroyd, who was high when he thought about filling up more space on the TV screen. He mixed that idea with the look of the big stone statues on Easter Island. At first, they were supposed to be pinhead lawyers from France, but Lorne Michaels suggested turning them into a weird alien family instead. Jane's calm, serious take on Primal balanced out Aykroyd's louder performance as Beldar. Audiences loved the Coneheads. They showed up in 11 episodes, then got their own animated special, a movie, toys, and even a song by Frank Zappa. Jane once said filming in the costume wasn't easy, especially since Aykroyd's sweating made the cone fill up with water if they worked too long. After Jane Curtin left Saturday Night Live in 1980, things got tough. She had been part of one of TV's most talked about shows, but suddenly she found herself floating in Hollywood with no clear direction. She described those years as full of pressure, stress, and oddly enough, fun. But it all wore her down. She didn't hang out with the SNL crowd much outside of work. The parties weren't her thing. She once said she stopped going because they felt more like sad postmortems, with writers looking miserable. From 1980 to 1984, she kept trying auditioning, filming pilots, but none of it stuck. She tried to stay under the radar in public, too. Fame hadn't been easy. Strangers would sometimes approach her with harsh words, and she found herself wishing she could just disappear. Then, in late 1983, something unexpected came her way. A new show idea was pitched to her. The title? Two Mommies. Her reaction was instant disgust. "I wanted to barf," she admitted later. The name sounded sugary and shallow, like it didn't take the subject seriously. Still, behind that awful title was a real idea. The creator, Cher Coben, had seen how divorced women leaned on each other for support and thought it could make a good series. A CBS executive saw promise too. Even though Jane didn't love the packaging, she started to see that the show might be more than fluff. It could actually say something. Thankfully, the title changed before things moved forward. What really made her say yes, though, was a meeting with director Bill Persky. He'd worked on the Dick Van Dyke Show and That Girl, and he knew how to craft characters. When they sat down, together, the conversation lasted hours. Bill laid out his vision. This wouldn't be another forgettable sitcom. It would be about real friendship, real struggles, and real people. Jane was sold when he promised her character Allie wouldn't be another cookie-cutter mom. He wanted the dialogue between the two leads to carry weight, to feel true. He even had the idea that each episode would end with the two women talking things over, bringing the story full circle. Jane liked that. It gave her something to work with. She already had some history with her soon-to-be co-star Susan St. James. They'd worked together on a movie a few years earlier, How to Beat the High Cost of Living. It wasn't a blockbuster, but it showed off how well they clicked. Susan had a lighter, more energetic style, while Jane's delivery was sharper, more grounded. The contrast worked. That earlier experience helped them settle into their roles on the new show without skipping a beat. When Kate and Allie finally aired in 1984, viewers immediately noticed their chemistry. It felt real. And it was. They already understood each other's rhythm. For her part, Jane wasn't content to just show up and read lines. She wanted Allie to feel real. Not just a mom, but a person with flaws, insecurities, and a growing sense of who she was. She saw Allie as someone who had lost herself in a marriage and was now figuring out who she could be on her own. Jane worked with the writers to make sure the character changed over time. She added little things, nervous habits, moments of quiet confidence that made Allie feel like someone you could actually know. Viewers, especially women, related to her. Allie's growth felt honest. By the end of the series, she wasn't the same woman she'd been at the start. She was stronger, sure of herself, whole. Her work didn't go unnoticed. In 1984, she won an Emmy for her role. The next year, she won again. That kind of back-to-back win was rare, especially for a female lead in a sitcom. It was a huge deal. Kate and Allie had started small, just 6 episodes, but those wins helped it stick around and climb the ratings. Jane's performance was sharp, funny, and full of heart. But even as the awards rolled in, Susan St. James never won despite being nominated 3 times. That created a bit of an imbalance, even if it wasn't anyone's fault. And yet, for all the fuss around the Emmys, Jane kept a level head. After her second win, someone asked her how it felt. She gave a blunt answer. Nothing happens the morning after. She was still waking up early, still making breakfast, still heading to work like any other day. The trophy didn't change much. She joked that they made good paperweights and kept them tucked away in her office. That attitude wasn't new. Even during the height of Kate and Allie's popularity, she avoided the spotlight. She didn't want the attention. If she had to go out, she tried to blend in to disappear. It all started at a hockey game in the mid-1970s. Jane Curtin wasn't expecting anything special that night, but that's when she met Patrick Lynch. Something just clicked between them. Not long after, they got married on April 2nd, 1975. Just months later, Jane would become a star when Saturday Night Live launched in October. While most of her castmates dove into the party scene, Jane chose a quieter life. She had a husband, a dog, and a little apartment with a garden. That simple life helped her stay grounded during a time when everything else around her was wild. Somehow, even with fame knocking at the door, her marriage stood strong. It still does. After more than 50 years, their bond has lasted longer than most in Hollywood. As her career took off, Jane made another big decision. She waited until she was 35 to become a mom. Her daughter, Tess, was born on January 16, 1983. The timing wasn't random. Jane was wrapping up her time on SNL and preparing to start Kate and Allie. Becoming a mother wasn't something she rushed into. She wanted to be ready. She once joked that Tess was the most annoying but loving thing in her life. It was a classic. Jane Curtin comment funny, honest, and right to the point. Motherhood wasn't easy, but she called it the best thing that ever happened to her. It changed everything. She started choosing roles that gave her a more regular schedule. Fame was still there, but being a mom came first. Instead of chasing the spotlight in New York or Los Angeles, Jane made a different choice. She moved to Sharon, Connecticut. It was quiet. It was real. It gave her family something that the city never could. During her Kate and Allie years, she commuted into the city for work and went home to Connecticut at night. Her co-star Susan St. James said that setup made the show possible, that distance from the industry helped Jane keep her public and private lives separate. In Connecticut, she was just a neighbor, just a mom. It was her retreat, her safe place, where she could breathe and be herself. Even while keeping a low profile, Jane found ways to make an impact quietly. She served as a national ambassador for UNICEF. She didn't seek attention for it, but the work mattered to her. She used her fame to support kids' health and education around the world. Years later, she competed on Celebrity Jeopardy and won $250,000 for UNICEF. Even though she didn't take first place, that donation showed how committed she still was to the cause. Jane wasn't one to make speeches or chase headlines about her charity work. She just did the work because she believed in it. Through all of this, something else was changing inside her. While working at SNL, Jane had a feminist awakening. Before the show, she'd been part of an improv group where equality wasn't just talk, it was real. But at SNL, the culture was different. The sexism hit hard. Some of her male castmates, like John Belushi, didn't think women were funny or even belonged there. It was a slap in the face, but Jane didn't back down. She called it out. She stayed true to herself, and in time, she broke barriers, becoming the first female anchor of Weekend Update. Even years later, she spoke about how frustrating it was to see that kind of old-school thinking still alive in the 70s. But she pushed forward anyway, opening the door for other women in comedy. After Kate and Allie ended in 1989, Jane Curtin found herself in a tough spot. She had just come off a long stretch of success, first on Saturday Night Live, then 5 solid years on Kate and Allie, and suddenly the momentum was gone. In 1990, she gave it another shot with a new sitcom called Working It Out. It sounded promising. It was made by the same guy who helped create Kate and Allie, but it didn't catch on. The show was canceled after just 13 episodes. That stung. It wasn't just the show. It was the realization that a string of wins doesn't guarantee the next one. For the next few years, she was in a bit of a professional wilderness, while others, from her SNL days, moved into big movie roles. Curtin mostly stuck to TV. She made a few appearances in films, but nothing that changed the course of her career. She wasn't fading, but she wasn't shining either. That changed in 1996. The turning point came with Third Rock. From Third Rock from the Sun, the show needed someone to play a grounded, no-nonsense anthropology professor to act as a foil to John Lithgow's wild alien character. At first, the part went to someone else, but the producers thought she was too sweet. Bonnie Turner, one of the creators and a friend from Curtin's SNL days, called her in. Curtin agreed to do 7 episodes, but once she got into it, she realized there was something special about the role. She liked the humor, she liked the character. She stayed, and just like that, Mary Albright was born. Mary was smart, skeptical, and constantly baffled by the weirdness around her. It was the perfect setup for Curtin's signature deadpan style. She became the grounded center of the chaos, and that made her essential to the show. The chemistry between her and Lithgow helped Third Rock find its rhythm, and the audience loved it. Curtin's decision to take that role made sense if you looked at her career as a whole. Unlike some of her peers who chased movies or edgy roles, she always favored sitcoms. There was a reason for that. She liked structure. The multi-camera sitcom format had regular hours, which let her have a personal life. When she joined SNL, she was already married. While others went wild at after-parties, she went home. That same approach carried over into the rest of her career. She wasn't chasing fame, she was building a stable life. Even so, not everything about Third Rock went smoothly. The show picked up dozens of Emmy nominations, and her co-stars won big. Lithgow won 3 times, Kristen Johnston won twice. Guessed. Stars were even getting recognized, but not Curtin. The Emmys completely overlooked her. It was strange, considering she had already won 2 back-to-back Emmys for Kate and Allie. She wasn't bitter, at least not publicly. But the silence was hard to ignore. Other awards noticed her. She won a Golden Satellite Award and got nominated. Again the next year. The Screen Actors Guild even nominated the whole cast a few times. But still, the Emmys kept looking the other way. That kind of quiet frustration wasn't new for Curtin. Even her decision to star in the Coneheads movie was a bit of a gamble. The sketch had been a big hit on SNL, and fans loved the characters, but turning it into a full-length film that was risky. Curtin wasn't sure at first. She worried it might make her seem stuck in the past, but she did it anyway, reuniting with Dan Aykroyd to bring the Coneheads to the big screen. The reviews were mixed. Some thought it was one of the better SNL to movie transitions. Others weren't impressed. Still, Curtin held her own. Her timing, her chemistry with Aykroyd, it was all still there. Over time, the movie found a loyal fan base. Years later, she stepped into something completely different, the Librarian movies from 2004 to 2008. She played Charlene, the no-nonsense assistant to a secret magical library. It was part fantasy, part adventure, and totally outside her sitcom comfort zone, but it worked. She brought her usual dry wit to the role, and it gave her a chance to show off a more mysterious, authoritative side. The trilogy was popular enough to spawn a full series later, and Curtin popped up again in the same role. It was a smart move. It opened her up to a younger audience that hadn't grown up with SNL or Kate and Allie. After Third Rock ended in 2001, Curtin didn't fade into retirement. Instead, she pivoted back to the stage. It was a return to her roots. Before all the TV fame, she'd started out doing improv in Cambridge. She had already done some theater in the early 80s, but this time, she took on weightier material. In 2002, she appeared in a revival of Our Town alongside Paul Newman. That role brought her serious attention, and it gave her a chance to remind people she wasn't just a comedian, she could handle drama too. She kept performing throughout the 2000s and 2010s, often doing live readings and guest hosting radio shows. The spotlight shifted, but she never really left it. Then, in 2018, she showed everyone again just how good she could be. In Can You Ever Forgive Me, she played Marjorie, a literary agent trying to keep Melissa McCarthy's character from falling apart. It was a small role, but a powerful one. Curtin didn't need to say much. Her silence, her expressions, they told the whole story. Critics noticed. The film was nominated for multiple Oscars, and even though Curtin wasn't one of the nominees, her performance held its own next to the leads. She didn't steal scenes, she anchored them, and even beyond all that, she kept experimenting. Voice acting gave her another way to perform. She voiced a wasp in Ants, teamed up again with Aykroyd, and added her voice to animated shows like Cyberchase and Recess. She even narrated audiobooks and documentaries, bringing her signature calm, clear tone to all kinds of stories. It was another example of her range and her willingness to try new things without needing to be the center of attention. Jane Curtin's career never followed the flashiest path. She wasn't chasing headlines or blockbuster fame, but she kept showing up, kept finding new ways to perform, and kept proving over and over that deadpan doesn't mean dull. It means steady, smart, and maybe even a little brilliant.